I'm Bob. I think you already know that. But anyway, this class I think is a lot of fun. It's pretty laid back. Hopefully the handouts are pretty good for you. There's one small handout if you have a Bofang that you definitely want to get. That's this little guy here. You can fold it in half if you want. Although it's geared to the AR5, it fits most of the Yaesus, most of the Bofangs. We're going back a ways. They just changed the color of the buttons up at the top for the menu and for exit. So it still works the same, work all along the way. So that's kind of it. So where are we going tonight? We're talking about VHF, UHF, a lot of different directions and ways. And at the end of the thing, we're going to kind of spread out around the walls and do a little in-house net. If you have mic fright, this is a good place to get over it. Can you believe we actually have mic fright? Just people just don't want to quite key that radio, but it's okay. It is okay. All right, with that, here we go. Everybody ready? Number one, you may have seen this before, but it's fun. We got to get sound. Let me back it up.
Yeah, you gotta back it up. Okay, let me see if I remember. You're missing some good stuff.
Tell me when you're ready and I'll try it again.
Hang on just a second. Speakers on?
It is better without the sound, with the sound, of course.
Go ahead and give it a try again. It's not connecting for some reason.
Okay.
My apologies.
You wanna plug it into the house?
It was working a minute ago.
Yeah, it was working just a minute ago.
After some, we're gonna have to
Just go ahead and let it go.
bypass that, I apologize.
Okay, well, anyway, that guy's a lot of double talk. If you've never seen that, it's called the turbo encabulator, and it's just a bunch of Jimmy's garbage words that he's put together, and it's a fun thing to listen to. So we won't put a lot of faith in that. Okay, so what do we do with our radios? We buy a new radio, like the young lady on the end's got two brand new ones there. They come in by whoever, UPS or what am I trying to say? Amazon, whoever, yeah, FedEx. Open up the box and take it out and start talking, right? It doesn't really work that way, does it? It really doesn't work that way. It would be nice if it would, but no, it really doesn't work that way. It takes a little bit of setup, a little bit of knowledge of what's going on, and then once you're up and running, you can do all the fun stuff that we do. We do parades and we do Oktoberfest and all kinds of things like that, and then heaven forbid we wind up in an emergency, and of course that's part of what we're here for as well, to step up to the plate when we're needed. I don't know how many of you know about all of the hams that were involved with the flooding down in Central Texas. We were by and large the front line to provide communications for all the search and rescue teams that were going out. The local facilities just couldn't supply that, and so we had a whole crew of hams that were down there doing that very thing. So sometimes you'll have a disaster. I don't know how many of you remember the Challenger disaster years ago when it went down, doing all the search and rescue and searching for bits and pieces and some things that were poisonous, et cetera, et cetera. A lot of hams stepped up to that because the state at that point realized they couldn't communicate with the county, and the county couldn't communicate with the local cities, and it was really a mess. And the ones who could really communicate, guess who? That's us. So anyway, when the emergencies happen like that, well, let's hope that never happens quite like that. So what does it take really? We'll talk about the different modes, what the frequencies, the tones, stuff that goes with that, something about simplex, duplex, all that good stuff. How do you get the stuff into your radio so it stays there? We'll talk about that, and then test it and make sure it works. How does it work? It works pretty good. Okay, here we go. VFO, variable frequency oscillator. All that means is that the radio can be tuned depending on your radio with up-down arrows, a knob that you tune, whatever it happens to be. Some on the keypad, you just type the numbers in. Anyway, we set a frequency on these things. A variable frequency means that you can vary it along the way, more or less infinitely. But the problem with that is that's only just the one frequency. Later on, you're going to want to go back to it or maybe have several stacked up so you can go back and forth. That's where memory comes in. We'll come to that in just a minute. When you turn your radio off, normally that last frequency that you were using is the one that's retained. Anything else you did is lost. It hasn't been saved. And it generally doesn't do offsets. Now, we haven't talked about what offsets are, but they're offset frequencies for repeaters, and generally those are not there when we're using VFO. VFO is just pretty plain vanilla, if you please. Enter the frequency using the keypad, up, down arrows, type it in, turn the dial, whatever it takes. Frequencies for VHF and UHF. Anybody know off the top of your head what is the frequency range for VHF for us? 144 to 140 to 144 to 148 megahertz. That's one of the most popular, obviously, bands that we're on. The UHF band, then, what is that one? That's much bigger. It's actually 430 in the U.S. It's 430 to 450. In Europe, it's 440 to 450. But it's very broad here. There's one more that's missing that we didn't talk about there. Anybody know what that is? 1.25. 1.25. Yep, 1.25 meter. 222 megahertz. Hello? There is one of those in there as well. We don't see too much of that. There are actually some 220 repeaters in the area still, though. They're still there. And actually, we don't talk about it here, but there was at least a couple of 6 meter repeaters in the area. I'm not sure if they still are or not. I've not checked lately. Anyway, those are the basic frequencies that you have that we work with. Memory, on the other hand, is our salvation. We go to VFO, set things up, and then once it's set up and it's working, we save that into a memory location. The memory is just like a post office box, basically. If you send something to my post office box to 123 at Allen, Texas, the postman knows to put that letter in that particular box. So we do the same thing with the radios. Only our boxes are labeled 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and we save our information into one of those little post office numbered boxes called memory. Then from that, we can hang on to it forever. We can do anything to it we want to. We can erase it. We can overwrite it. We can update it. We can edit it if we need to. You can enter it manually in the VFO mode normally and then save it to one of those locations. And then, of course, to use it, we just select the location we want to use. And again, that's depending on the radio. You're turning a knob, using the up-down arrow buttons to go to the different memory locations. Or some will let you actually type it in on the keypad and go straight to a given memory location. What does a memory location contain? Well, as a minimum, it's going to contain the frequency, the offset, and tone. And we've not talked about tone and offset, but we will in just a minute. Those are the 3 key things that we have to have for most repeaters. In addition to that, there's several digital modes that are popular, namely Wires X and D-Star. And if you're doing setting up something for one of those, it will also contain whatever information you need for that service. So memory is our godsend, really. In addition to that, if you're driving down the road and you need to go to somebody else's repeater, it's not very applicable to go to VFO mode, dial in a frequency and set all that stuff up. But at that time, you probably passed it out of town anyway. So we just go 1, 2, 3 and go to a particular location in memory, and we've got everything that we need. A lot of power in doing all this, especially if you know how to use your equipment. You don't have the buzz that goes with that, but you'll see the video if you haven't seen it. It's kind of cute. You have a lot of power with just a little handheld radio. You can do a lot with it. Oh, there's sound. That's power, right? That's power. So we have a lot of power like that. Okay, let's talk simplex, duplex a little bit, or the plexes a little while. What is simplex? Simplex, one person talks and everybody else listens, basically. We're not going through a repeater generally. We're just doing a local area group or one-to-one perhaps. I would imagine that a lot of the rescue teams used a lot of simplex while they were down there just to talk among themselves in a local, tight area. Anyway, a half duplex, which is when we go through the repeater. We call it half duplex because one talks and the repeater listens, but then retransmits whatever it hears. So it's kind of a two-pronged thing. There's 2 things happening at once. The repeater is receiving and it's retransmitting at the same time, hence the term half duplex. As opposed to full duplex, Full duplex would be like our cell phones. You know, on the cell phone, somebody can be talking to you, you can be talking to them at the same time, and you may or may not understand each other and all that exchange, but you can do that in full duplex. But at any rate, half duplex is what we call that. We transmit to the repeater listens to it, transmits it back, and somebody else listens to it along the way. One person talks, everybody still listens in that particular case. And we're going to talk about the different frequencies and why we do this offset and all that crazy stuff. We'll see that in just a minute. Little diagram of that. Why do we need to do all this stuff? Well, in most cases for a repeater, and we're going to primarily focus on repeaters, by the way. But for a repeater to work, we generally have only one antenna. And it's going to transmit and receive at the same time. How do we do that? Magic. The magic is in that thing called a duplexer right in the middle of the chart there. By the way, you have that same diagram on the back of your sheet that you take notes on. But incidentally, the note sheet, if you want to fill in the blanks on that as we go along, you feel free to do that. We'll hopefully answer all the questions as we go through it, and you'll see all that. Anyway, you'll also see this diagram. So anyway, we'll have one antenna. It's going to transmit and receive at the same time through that antenna. So how do we do that? We have to have two different frequencies then, don't we? For the VHF world, normally the transmit and receive is separated by 600 kilohertz. That's enough at that frequency that thing in the middle called a duplexer can separate those two. So when we come in on one frequency to the antenna, the duplexer picks it up, sends it over to the receiver. The receiver then talks to the controller and says, I have audio. The controller says, transmit. Our transmitter, transmit the audio. It goes back to the duplexer with a different frequency, 600 kilohertz above or below what the receiving frequency was, and sends that back out on the antenna. That's how we can use one antenna and transmit and receive on it at the same time. And if it were UHF, it would still be the same thing. It would just be separated by 5 megahertz instead of 600 kilohertz for those things to work. And it's kind of magic, but it works really well. Frequency information. Where do you get all this information anyway? You have a little spreadsheet that I printed out that's called, I don't know what it is. It's called anything. It's not called anything. It's just a little spreadsheet with a bunch of repeater frequencies on it. Where did I get that information? All over the place. There's a lot. Yeah, that one right there. Yeah, the little spreadsheet looking thing. You can find that stuff in a lot of different places. If the repeater is a club repeater, generally you can go to the club's website and get the information. There is an online app or an app for the phone called Repeater Book, which is quite good. And generally, at least the repeater book that I use on my phone knows where I'm located. And it can tell me what repeaters are near me, and then it can also tell me what frequencies and offsets and tones and anything else I need to know about it to make it work. Okay, so get all that information, find all that information. Now I'm ready to do something with it. Repeater offsets, that's that difference between transmit and receive frequency we talked about just a moment ago. All right, 600 kilohertz is the offset for the VHF, 1.6 megahertz for 220, and 5 megahertz for UHF. A lot of the radios are smart radios now, and that offset is automatic, meaning that we have determined that certain offsets will be used universally, and the radio will just automatically do that for you. But you can't always count on it that that's the case. It may or may not be the case. You want to be sure you have your offset set up correctly. That's the manual automatic thing. What does the radio show you? Again, it depends on the radio, how new the radio is. Some of the newer radios really are really good. They show you what the frequency that you're listening on, which is the repeater's transmit frequency. And then when you transmit, you push the button down, it'll show you what your transmit frequency is. That is, it lets you see how much offset you have there. And many will also have the tone listed up there. If you have a tone that you're working with, you can actually see that. Or you can push a button or two and you can have it show it to you again. So you can see all that stuff that's there. Radios have gotten much better than they used to be, obviously. And the transmit sequence for the radio and the repeater, we've already talked about that, but one more time, I key down my handheld, And when I do that, it changes the frequency that I'm seeing on the screen. The screen is showing my receive frequency. It's going to switch to transmit frequency for the repeater. The repeater's receive frequency. I transmit, the repeater receives it, goes through the process, goes to its transmitter, sends it back out. When I unkey, then I can hear that little, the squelch tail at the end, because it lets me know that that went all the way through, came back out, came back, and I hear that little at the end. Somebody else who's listening hasn't done anything but hold the radio, and they're listening on the repeater's transmit frequency. They hear the whole thing. That's kind of the sequence of where it all goes through. Is it really important to know that? I think it is. The reason I think it is, if you understand that, especially if one doesn't work, you set one up and you can't hit the repeater still, you know where to look and try to figure out what's gone wrong. Okay, as I said, the club websites, newsletters, if you get newsletters. Artsy is a company down in Austin. They publish a repeater book themselves, which is quite good. They are a membership organization. I think it's $20 a year. I think that's right. But you can also use it online. If you go online and log in, if you subscribe to it, go online, log in, and you can go to any city in actually almost all the world, but especially in the United States. And you can look for specific repeaters. You can get just VHF, just UHF, just D-Star, just Wires X, DMRs, whatever you want. And it will narrow it down and show you just what you're looking for. And I just want to know just the repeaters in McKinney, Texas. Then that's all it'll show me is the repeaters that are here in McKinney. So it's a pretty nice way of getting stuff and putting on a screen where you can write it down or you can copy it down if you want to. A lot of apps out there, repeater books. ARRL has their own repeater book, which they update every year. It's pretty good. It's not terribly expensive, but it's very handy. Personal recommendation, all of us have some that we like to go to, and of course if you get one of those, that's even better. And then just do an internet, if all else fails, just do an internet search for a repeater in McKinney, Texas, or repeater in Van Alstyne, Texas, or wherever it is that you happen to be looking for that. Just a quick tidbit. What about when you make a trip? You're getting ready to go out of town, and I just to use a for instance, you're going to go down to Austin for a couple of days. What towns would you go through between here and Austin? Sizable towns. Waco. Where? Hillsboro. Temple. Belton. Waxahachie, as somebody called it. Waxahachie. So and then of course there's Austin at 7. Then there's some in between. What about repeaters? Do they have repeaters in all those towns that I might want to contact? Better yet, why might I want to contact a repeater in Waco? If I might have an emergency for starters, yeah, and that would be a place to go. I might be looking for a good place to eat. I might be looking for gasoline. I might have a flat tire, and I'm looking for somebody to come out and change the tire for me or something like that. So any number of reasons like that. So my point being that when you know you're going to make a trip, find one of the repeater applications that you like where you can get that information, program that into your radio ahead of time, and if you never need it, it's not a big deal. You got it. But if you need it, you've got it too. It's always better to have it and not need it than vice versa is the way I look at that. So I do that. We went down to Blanco State Park a couple of weeks back down in Central Texas, and I had programmed into my mobile radio and into a handheld most of those repeaters in those little towns that went through there. So, okay. Simplex. We'll talk about that just a little bit. What we've been talking about so far primarily was the half duplex working through a repeater. Simplex normally implies there's no offset. We're talking and listening on the same frequency. There's no tones or anything like that. I talk, and theoretically, everybody else listens. What happens if two of us talk at the same time, transmit at the same time? We get a garbage mess out there is what we basically get, generally. Popular simplex calling frequencies. There's a reason for mentioning this. Throughout the United States, these 3 frequencies are considered calling frequencies. The idea being that if you're traveling to Oklahoma City and you don't know anybody along the way, but you think there might be a ham out there someplace that would pass you or you'd pass by, you set your radio to listen on 146.52 simplex and take off. And a lot of times I've done that. I see somebody with a license plate, an amateur license plate, And I will key my radio up and call that call sign off the license plate. And lo and behold, they're listening on 146.52. And we have a conversation. And it's pretty cool when you can do that, you know. Likewise, if you have your radio on and somebody else sees you, they may do the same thing and call you by call sign and talk with you. But anyway, 146.52 is the chosen frequency. The idea behind it originally was you'd call somebody on that frequency, then you would switch to a different frequency and get off that one so other people could use it. But traveling, it generally doesn't matter. There's not going to be that much traffic on there. When we do our simplex net on Monday nights, you know, when we advertise that, we say we're on 146.54, which is just a little bit up, unless it's busy, and then go up to 146.56, and that's what we're accommodating. 146.52, there might be some folks who've said, we'll go to 146.54. We get there, they're talking. We don't want to override them or interfere, so we just move up a little bit, and that keeps everybody happy. 223.50 on the 220 band, and then 446 all zeros for the UHF band. If you have a dual band radio and you're traveling, then you set your A band on 146.52 and the B band on 446 all zeros, and you're covered. If somebody wants to contact you there, they can. And I've actually had that happen several times. I was going to a ham fest. I believe it was one in Arkansas, the one at Queen Wilhelmina Campground in Arkansas. They have there every year. I think that was the one. And I picked up a guy out of Texarkana, and we started talking. He was going to the same ham fest. So we talked for about 3 hours. Just, you know, I mean, we just had a good time. And that's part of what it's about. It really is part of what it's about. And then there's special usage things that we do with frequencies. Sometimes we'll say, okay, we've got a bike ride going on out here. And for the people who are going along with a bike ride for close-in communications, we're going to designate 146.58 is going to be our special use frequency just for this event that we're dealing with. So there's any number of ways that we can do that. One of the things that will happen, side tripping just a little bit, when we have a big event, and right now the big bike events have kind of fallen by the wayside after COVID, but we have had those before, and I suspect they'll come back, where they ride the bikes from somewhere over here in Collin County all the way to Fort Worth. And they set up repeater stations along the way. Normally, whoever's organizing that event will get hold of Ron as our repeater trustee and say, hey, can we use your repeater on Thursday between noon and 6 o'clock as we're going through McKinney? And normally he would say yes. That would be a special use. We'd still use the same call sign, our repeater with ID, as it always does, but we've just given them permission that it's okay with us for them to use our repeater during their special event. And that's just a courtesy that most radio clubs will extend without any problem at all. Okay. Where do we go from here? I thought that was cute.
Was the kitten asking for a new radio?
I think he was questioning, why do I have to do all this? We haven't talked about tones. Lord knows we got to talk about tones. What are tones? Analog tones. There's two kinds of tones. There's analog and digital. In this area of the country, we don't see much digital. Nearly everything is analog. These subaudible tones, subaudible meaning they're transmitted by the transmitter at a very, very low level and a very low frequency that normally we wouldn't hear with our ears. They'd be subdued enough and a low enough frequency we just don't even know they're there. That's generally speaking, that's generally going to be the case. So that's what that is. CTCSS, Continuous Tone Control Swell System. You'll see it listed by a whole bunch of different names. And I have a cheat sheet. Let me get my cheat sheet just a second. I can't remember all this without it. And I'll take my water bottle. Okay, let's see here. Generous Electric calls it CG, Channel Guard, for their tones. Johnson Radio, we don't see many Johnson radios today, but when they were big, they did TG for Tone Guard. RCA did QC for Quiet Channel. Kenwood did QT for Quiet Talk. It's all the same thing. And what is it? It's a way of sharing a frequency without having to listen to everybody else that you don't really want to hear. That's really what it boils down to. In the commercial world, you really see this a lot. Yeah, Ron?
Yeah, and Ericsson, GE, they call it
P-
Motorola calls it private.
PL, private line.
PL, and that kind of stuff.
Yeah, a lot of times we call it a PL tone. That's just kind of gotten to be a convention, although it was a Motorola thing, yeah. So basically what this is going to do, we set our radio to transmit a given tone, and these are predefined frequencies. I mean, they're not random. They're weirdo frequencies like 110.9 hertz cycles per second in the old way of thinking. So that's a very low frequency, and it's transmitted at a very low level where we don't hear it. But when I key my radio and it transmits that subaudible tone. The repeater, on the other hand, is sitting there waiting for something to come through. The repeater says, there's an RF carrier. I hear somebody out there. Do I want to listen to them or not? And it looks at this little chart and looks at that signal and says, let me see if my tone matches their tone. Oh, it does. Okay, I'll let the signal pass on through and go back out and be retransmitted. And if it doesn't, it just ignores it. The repeater doesn't key up, it just sits there. We can use the converse of that also. If the transmitter, the repeater site, also transmits a tone back, then we can also transmit a received tone into our radio that does exactly the same thing. Then when the transmitter transmits, our radio recognizes the tone, opens squelch, and lets us hear the conversation. On the other hand, if there's another repeater 75 miles away that's on the same frequency, a different tone, I would never hear them because of the tones. And occasionally we do have that. Where is that repeater that's so close?
Waxahachie.
Is it Waxahachie? Okay.
A little bit west of it.
Okay. And are they on the same tone as we?
Yeah.
Okay. You'll notice, by the way, on that little chart of frequencies, a lot of the tones used is 110.9. That's a popular one to use in this area. And you'll find that's generally the case when you go to a given city or a given area, locale. One tone will be most popular in that area. It'll be used by nearly everybody, and that's not unusual. But hopefully, if the people in Waxahachie would change their tone, we'd never change ours, would we?
There's one in Oklahoma too.
Yeah, yeah. And sometimes when the ducting gets just right, the atmosphere gets just right, we will actually hear their repeater, and they'll actually hear us as well. It does happen sometimes. Usually on Plano's doing the balloon fest. Well, they pick good days to fly the balloons. Maybe that has something to do with it. Okay, we talked about how they work, transmit and receive tones. Do you have all the tones that you need? Actually, you do. All the radios have it built in. That's the great thing about the digital world today. So much good digital stuff works. We used to, in the old days, I show my age when I say this, don't I? In the old days, we had to have a crystal for everything. So if you wanted to transmit on 146.52, you had to have a crystal for that. And then if you wanted to go to the repeater and go to 146.74, you had to have a crystal for that. And then for the tones, there were actually mechanical reeds that would vibrate at 110.9 cycles per second. Yeah, I mean, they were little tone modules for each one of those different frequencies of tone. Ron?
In World War II, when they were using tones, they had tuning forks.
Yeah,
Precision tuning forks.
you use precision tuning forks.
Really large.
Yeah, big one that you could use, which would in essence generate the tone. So fortunately, we don't have to do that with our digital synthesizers that we have today. We can go with one crystal control oscillator and divide it up and down, mix it all kinds of ways, and get anything we want out of it, which is what we do.
Sometimes I've seen a repeater it'll have just one tone, or
Yes.
it'll have both of them written down.
Right.
If it only has one, does that mean it's the same tone for up and down, or it only uses transmit and not receive? Or
Generally speaking, now anytime you say there's a rule for this, there'll always be somebody who is the exception. But generally speaking, if you only see one tone listed, that means it's listening for that tone. It's not retransmitting a tone. If you see both listed, then that usually tells you it's listening for one and it's going to transmit that same whatever that tone listed, it's going to transmit it back. Usually they're the same tone. They don't have to be. They can be different if they want to. But the good thing there again is, especially if you're in a congested area, you can set your tones. Now, you can even do tones with simplex if you want to. You know, if we had 25 people going out on a search and rescue, and 5 of us are going to do this, and 5 are going to do that, and 5 are going to do something else, we can put this group on one tone, this on another tone, and then they would only hear each other when they're talking on their tone. Now, if we don't put a receive tone, so anything that is said would come into us. So we'd probably do the receive tone too to keep it out if we wanted to. But you can play with it any way you want to. But they work. That's the great part about it. Even though they're so close together in frequencies, and those fractional parts of a cycle that are involved in there, they still work, and they work very, very well.
I have a question.
Sure.
So, the example you mentioned where you have like 25 people and you assign 3 different tones. That's only for receiving the people that you want to listen to, but in reality, the same frequency, you're still gonna get congestion if 2 people try to speak at once, right?
Yes. Everybody's still on the same frequency. And if I want to listen, if I just wanted to listen, I can always push the little monitor button on the side of the radio, which opens up the squelch and lets me hear anything that's being said. No matter what the tones are, I can open the squelch manually and hear anything that's said. Yes. Okay, do you have all the tones you need? Yes, you do, because there's a finite number of those tones. I think they're listed on the back of that same page that had the little repeater diagram on it. I think all the tones are listed there in order. So yes, you do. You have all that you need to do what you want to do. Those are the accepted tones that we all use. Digital codes. Digital codes do essentially the same thing. The difference being that we send a digital code rather than a tone. It does it in ones and zeros, but it works exactly the same way. And all the radios that I'm aware of that are at least newer radios built in the last 10 years, do have all the digital codes in there too, called DCS, digital coded squelch. And you can pick that if that's what the repeater says it wants to see. Okay, something to think about. What do you think? Are we okay? I'm glad you asked a question. I didn't stop along the way and tell you, if you have a question or a comment, please tell me. Just say, hey, and we'll cover it. Especially if you have a question, we'll try to cover it as we go. So with that, any thoughts or questions? I'm going to grab a sip of water.
I still have a question with the same topic. So, because let's say that I'm waiting for the tone to activate my radio. So, to me, it looks like the channel is open because there's nobody talking. But there could be
Right.
somebody talking. I just
Yes.
don't know because it didn't open my
Good point. Good point. He just made a really good point. So we got 2 groups out here, and they're using the same frequency but different tones. And for his radio, he doesn't hear a thing when the other group's talking. So if he just suddenly keys down and starts talking, he may be talking over a lot of people. So when you're doing that, generally you want to listen first, hit the monitor button, make sure nobody's talking first. Just a courtesy thing. I'm glad you said that. Yes, that can certainly be the case, and we can wind up with a mess. Yeah. Once upon another lifetime, I worked for a place called Sherman Two-Way Radio in Omaha, Nebraska, and Mr. Sherman had set up some pagers and the transmitters and all that stuff. He released these things out to people, but he only had one repeater on the tallest building in Omaha, which was great. And he could never get the people who would lease these things to listen first before they keyed up the transmitter. And so they'd key up the transmitter right in the middle of somebody else doing something, sending out another page to their people, And because of that, there was a lot of people that were upset. Hey, glad to see you, Tim.
Good to see you, Bob.
Does that help a little bit?
Yes.
Okay.
I didn't think of that, but that makes sense.
Yeah, but that's a good point. I'm glad you brought that up. Okay, so if we tie it all together, what do we do with it? Generally speaking, now this face the folks on the end down there have the new radios. This will be one of those things. Place the radio in VFO mode. Select whatever the frequency is that we're looking at. Then select the offset. Offset can be plus or minus. I failed to mention that earlier. Offset can be plus or minus. That is to say, the 5 megahertz on UHF can be either above or below the listening frequency. So I have to take care of the offset. Most of the radios now have an automatic offset, and they will usually get it right. They're usually okay with that. And then select the tone that's going to be needed for that. And while you're in VFO mode, you've set everything up. You can do a thing we call ka-chunking the repeater, which a lot of people say you should never ever ka-chunk the repeater without giving your call sign. And I agree with that, with the small exception that I want to see if it's going to work first. So I will do this. I'll key it briefly, let it go, And if the repeater comes back with a squelch tail, I know I'm working, then I'll give my call sign and go on. If the repeater doesn't come back to me, then what are we doing anyway? Now, if you want to be totally legal, you know, you give your call sign the first time when you key down and say testing or something if you need to. But I'm a little bit lax on that. I will do the ka-chunk from time to time just to see if everything's working.
Generally, it's okay to go ahead and see if you can hit it
Yeah,
before you start talking.
yeah. Most people do that. Technically, you should. Yeah, technically you shouldn't, but most people do in real life. I mean, the real life is we do that. Once it's working and everything's good, hopefully you can get on there and say, hey, anybody give me a radio check? And talk to somebody and go back and forth. They can tell you about your audio quality, if you're too soft or too loud or what, scratchy or whatever. You know, if you're way out on the fringe of the repeater, can't get in too well. Then once it's good, then you save it to a memory location so you can get it back later on. And that's where the big rub comes in. How do you save it to a memory location? That's a good question. Anybody know what RTFM stands for? Read the fine manual or the full manual or whatever it takes. And sometimes we do have to do that. Seriously, we do. We just got to read the manual, see what it takes. Now, what about the translations? Anybody see anything wrong with that? I think the Chinese, bless their hearts, are getting better at translating into English, but it used to be pretty tough sometimes the way they would translate things into English. You had to kind of guess at what they really meant, but generally the manuals have gotten better. The Baofangs, of course, are still very popular. The old Woshungs used to be a real popular brand, and they've fallen by the wayside, but those radios, you can generally go online and do a search, and somebody will have created a cheat sheet that will walk you through how to save stuff to memory if you want to do that. And ease the pain just a little bit. Now, getting it into the radio. What we've talked about we can do, we get all set up, read the manual. Of course, that's a good thing. If you have a cheat sheet, that's even better. You can finger bone it, you know, put all the stuff in and select a memory location and save it in there and then come back and test it and then come back and do it again. If you got 25 to put in there, that's kind of laborious to say the least. The better way is if you can use a computer with it. Most all the newer radios, as far as I know, all the newer radios either have available or come with some kind of a USB-based cable. One end plugs in the radio, one end plugs into the USB port on your computer. A lot of them also will give you free programming software, although it's not the best in the West. Yaesu, for example, gives you a pitiful thing for software. It works. It does work. But if you want to insert a channel, if you want to move things around, you just got to wipe out that one and put it back in again. It doesn't give you a lot of flexibility. RT Systems is probably the premier company out there of all the companies. RT Systems makes software and cables for just about any radio that's ever existed.
And they are local.
Are they local?
Yep, they're up in like Salina.
Are they? I never knew that.
Yeah.
I'm glad to hear that,
Just
though.
around the corner.
But they're good people, and they are good people. And they're not generally you can buy any one of their programs for $25 flat out. You can buy it online now and download it.
Every one of them, every model is $25.
Yes.
The downside is that every model is $25.
Yes.
So if you get a Baofeng UV5R, great. You get the UV6, guess what?
You got to buy it.
It's a new piece of
You got
software.
another software. Yeah.
And they require you to either use their cable or if it's a major manufacturer like Yaesu, the manufacturer's cable will be acceptable.
Yeah, and a few of the radios just use a standard USB cable, which helps, but most of them don't. Generally what we're doing when we're programming, by the way, is that little cable that hooks up is actually a serial converter. So it's actually taking stuff as if it were a serial port on the computer, converting it to something the radio understands. So anyway, there's another one out there called Chirp, which is absolutely marvelous, and it's totally free. You go to Chirp, just look up Chirp on the internet. And they do almost a daily build on that software, so you can get the one that was done today, the latest and greatest, literally. They also have a long list that tells you every radio that they ever supported. So you can check and see if it'll support your radio. It's totally free, which is the nice.
The older radios in Chirp are supported only by the older version, now called Chirp Legacy.
Yeah, yeah.
You cannot have both Chirp and Chirp Legacy at the same time.
I didn't know that,
That's
but I'm
the
not
only
surprised.
real downside to that one is if you try to use it and you've got both kinds of radios,
Yeah.
you end up having to uninstall and
Yeah.
reinstall.
Yeah. But Chirp really is good. It's the newer versions now have really come up. You know, if you want to insert a line, just insert, no big deal. Copy this line, put it up there. You can do that. You need to edit something, it's real easy to edit. So Chirp, it really is good. Another good factor about particularly Chirp, but some of the others as well. But a good thing about them is if you need to get on the air quickly, like on your new radios, I can email you a Chirp file that has 15 or 20 local repeaters on it. You hook up your cable, install the software, talk to it, and import that file, send it to the radio, and you don't have to finger bone it all.
The cool thing about Chirp too is it'll connect to the repeater book. There's a link
Yes.
to the repeater book and it connects to it and it will yank in everything. Of course, then your channels start to get over.
You get stuff you don't want. Yeah.
You really don't want.
Yeah, it also works kind of like some of the financial software, like Quicken and those, where you can download your information from the bank into the software. Does the same kind of thing from repeater. Downloads all the information from a repeater book, but you get overkill that way, kind of like you're saying. So anyway, USB versus serial. This is a problem. A lot of the older cables that came out used a conversion chip that Windows 11 doesn't understand anymore. And that's a problem. You can buy a new cable with a new chip, or if you're patient, you go back to about 2013 and download the driver from 2013, and it works in Windows 11. It will work. But it's a pain in the fingers, needless to say, to do that. At any rate, bottom line is, if you want to program the radio and do more on a frequency or two, it's really much better to do it with the computer. It's also more accurate because you can see what you're doing there all at one time on the lines that go through there.
There's a bunch of YouTube videos about
Oh, yes.
Chirp and
Yes.
how to program your
Yes.
radio
Yep.
and specifically for whatever type of radio you have,
Yes.
which I did a lot.
You know, that's the great thing about the internet stuff that we can get. You can find help on how to do just about anything you want to do, including anything you want on Chirp. Do it with your eyes closed, right? Nothing to it. Piece of cake. All right, we got one more thing I want to talk about. I should have put a slide in for it, and for whatever reason I didn't. What about some of the digital modes that are out there now? Namely, 3 digital modes that are popular. What are they? Anybody name them off? DMR, Wires X, D-Star. Those are the 3 biggies. I tried DMR, played with it for a while, and said, okay, that's okay. Those who want to do it, go do it. This is just not my cup of tea. Didn't like DMR. I love Wires X. The reason I like Wires X is if you know the repeater's frequency, that's all you need. And it's got to be a Yaesu radio, though. That's the catch. It has to be a Yaesu radio that will do Wires X. But if it will, all you need is the frequency, and you hit that frequency, and you press the Wires X button on your radio for a couple of seconds. It knows what to do, and it will connect with that repeater, do all the things it needs to do, and you're in. You don't need to worry about offsets or anything else. It just handles it, and you're off and running. Now, once you get into it, then there's some operational things that's nice to know. In Yaesu, they call the different areas where people have repeaters rooms. Mark has one. Our Melissa repeater is a Wires X repeater, and we have a room established for that. So when you go into Wires X and tell it to connect on Wires X, you'll see it says Mark and our room number. Now, most likely when you do that, guess what you're going to hear? Crickets. Nada. And if you throw your call sign out there and say anybody listening, you're probably still going to get nada. You might, but you may not. One of the most popular Wires X rooms right now is called Kansas City Wide. And generally, there'll be 125 to 150 people logged into that any time of the day or night. And so on the Yaesu radios, again, there's a mechanism you go through, and you say, I want to connect to a different room, get a list of the rooms, and it will show you in order a list of rooms by the number of people who are logged in. And usually Kansas City Wide will be right at the top of the list. And you tap that one and to connect it, and it goes, beep, beep, and you're in. And all of a sudden, you hear all these people talking. And there are more nets on that repeater than you can shake a stick at. One guy calls it talking food net. And his standard question when he comes on the net controller's standard question is, what are you having for dinner tonight? And you wouldn't believe some of the answers he gets. I was listening to him one night, and he was talking to some guy in Iceland. And he had some kind of fish I had never heard of. And I went out and looked up that fish just to see what it was. It's some kind of weird cold water fish. But that was what he was having for dinner that night. So, I mean, there's stuff like that. And then, of course, there's more practical things about radio and storms and storm chasing and you name it. But anyway, that's a really good repeater if you want to play with the Wires X. And we do have that, and it does work quite well. Any thoughts on that? D-Star. Why do I think, personal opinion, why do I think Wires X is superior to D-Star? I like Yaesu. You know, they say that you're always partial to the first radio you ever owned. And I believe in my case that's true. My first two radios were Yaesus. And so that's probably true. I did get into D-Star big time for a while. And I liked D-Star, especially before Wires X came on. Yaesu had a thing called Wires prior to Wires X. And the Wires was really just for local talking among people that are local to each other. And it would do sort of like Wires X. It would figure out what your coordinates are and transmit. You could transmit back and forth, send little messages back and forth between the radios and things like that. But it wasn't the internet connected thing that Wires X is. Now, D-Star, of course, by the way, Wires X, of course, is all done with the internet. That link between our site in Melissa, the link goes from that site to my house. There's an FTM 100 radio there hooked to my internet. It picks that up, sends it back out on the internet to wherever it's going to go. In this case, say we've selected the Kansas City wide. Through the internet, it sends it to Kansas City wide, transmits it in Kansas City, and back, and then the reverse trip is the same. So, and it just, you know, it really does work, and it works nicely. D-Star is also a digital mode. It runs through the internet. One of the earlier ones, a couple of downsides on D-Star. The ICOM radios tend to be a little more expensive than Yaesu, just as a given rule of thumb. The repeaters were horrendously more expensive. For example, the Wires X repeaters that we have now, DRX2 is what we have. There's a DRX1 original, DRX2 is the current. You can buy one of those today for about $1,600, complete, ready to go. With and it will do VHF or UHF. It won't do both simultaneous data, one and D-Star. And each of those models is about $2,000 each. So as you can see, you can add up some real money real fast with D-Star. But anyway, once it works, it works. Now, the problem with using it to me is the way D-Star ICOM, it's an ICOM thing, the way ICOM wants you to do that is they want you to know all about your radio and be able to sing and dance with it in the shower. And so you turn on this radio and you push this button and it figures out where you are, and you push another button and you say, I want a repeater, and it pushes another button. It says, here's repeaters near you, and you scroll it, you say, I want to talk to that one. Fine, you do that, and finally you get on that repeater. They call their distant repeaters reflectors, by the way, instead of rooms in D-Star. Same basic thing. They're reflectors all over the world, just like there are with Wires X. So you can go in and you can find a reflector, and they're called REF with a 3-digit number following. Now, I don't know what they do when they get past 1,000. Maybe they are now, I don't know. But anyway, you go into REF 001C, which I think is in the UK somewhere. And it makes that connection, and you can talk to anybody that's in the UK on that particular repeater. Works great. But it's a pain. If you're driving down the road and you want to connect to somebody's repeater, you can't do that. So what I do, there's also some things you can do in programming an ICOM radio that you can program to the radio. So in channel, in the first memory location, you put the necessary thing to check the repeater. You put a second one in that will disconnect you from D-Star if you want. And then there's a third one that you can use to test called echo. So you transmit an E to it, and then you say something, unkey, and it will repeat back to you or echo back to you what you said. That way you know you're working and everything's okay. And then you can also tell it, I want to connect to reflector number whatever. So you key it, goes to there, then you have to turn off that, because you don't want to be telling it to connect every time. So you got to remember to go back to the talking memory location again. and then you can talk. So to me, D-Star's just got a whole lot more moving parts, and it works good. It's fine. It's just to me, it's not nearly as simple as the Wires X world, and it's a lot more expensive too, I think. So wanted to mention those things. Okay, we're dead on schedule. We're looking good. What about nets? Well, what do you need to know to get on a net? Well, first of all, you got to know it exists, don't you? You know somebody has a net. You want to know where it is and what time the net kicks off, what frequency or what repeater is it going to be on. If you know the repeater or the club name, you can probably find the frequency for that one. That probably is not a big deal. And then the people that are going to host the net will need to appoint a net control. Why we call them a control instead of a controller, I've never really figured that out. I don't guess it really matters, semantics. But anyway, need somebody there who's going to be in charge. We got to have somebody to blame, right? Got to have somebody to blame. So with that, somebody's selected with that, and then they will have a script. You have a sample script in there that's got a lot of red print in it. That's the script we're going to use tonight when we do our little sample net. And that script generally tells you kind of what you need to go through, the steps that you need to process for the net to proceed like you want it to. When you're net control, when you are the net control, and by the way, if you want to be net control on our Sunday night net, we would love to have you do that. All you need to do is get a hold of Tanya Vining, who's our net control manager. She will add your call sign to that, put you in the rotation schedule. Right now, we're only coming up for net control about every 2.5 months. So we've got a lot of people lined up, and that makes it nice, so you don't have to do it all the time. But if you want to do that, it's a lot of fun. By the way, a side benefit to knowing how to do net control, if you get caught in the middle of an emergency and somebody's got to take over, you know what to do. You can take it over and say, hey, this is my call sign. I'll be net control for this situation, and take off and do what you need to do, because you've done it before.
You have to audition for that before you try to...
Actually, no, do you have to audition? No, you really don't. As a matter of fact, not only do you not have to audition, but if you're hesitant about it, if you don't feel comfortable doing it the first time around, let one of us know, let Tanya know, and she'll pair you up with one of us, and we'll sit with you and walk you through it and get you through it the first time or two, so you get comfortable with it. I mean, we're not going to leave anybody hanging. But it is a lot of fun, too, by the way. It's great fun to do that. Okay, and then you want to ID your station every 10 minutes or so. I'm really bad about forgetting to do that. I will tend to get rolling and doing things, and I look up, oh, it's been 20 minutes since I've ID'd. So just, I don't know if you can set a timer on your phone or something every 10 minutes. That works, whatever works. But anyway, you want to ID, give your call sign, and generally you give your name so people know who's talking. Etiquette. What about etiquette on the net? Is there any room for being nice on the net? Yeah, there is. Yeah, there really is. The net is not really an appropriate place to get into an argument over anything. Now, maybe somebody would call somebody down on the net if they got out of line. For example, we don't do profanity on the nets, and that's an amateur radio thing. We just generally don't do profanity. So if I'm net control and somebody logged into our net and they started throwing out a lot of profanity, I'd call them out on it. I would say, hey, that's not appropriate for this net. It's not appropriate for amateur radio, and I'd appreciate very much if you cut off the profanity. If they don't do it, then I'll ask them to leave the net, if it came down to that. Hopefully it wouldn't. And if they persisted and you went on anyway, then we probably just call the net and shut it down and shut the repeater off if we have to do that even remotely. There's ways to do that. But anyway, just being nice is a good thing to do. When you're talking, and especially when you're net control and you're controlling this, you also want to give a little bit of time between conversations for somebody else to get in that might need to get in. And that's telling me it's time for my evening medication, which I've already taken. Right now, I'm ahead of the game. So anyway, you get that little pause in there, so if somebody needs to get in, they could get in. If somebody finishes talking and immediately I key down as net control and go on, I don't give somebody an opportunity to get in. Now, what about an emergency situation? Somebody has an emergency. What are the pro words or the pro signs that let people on the net know you have an emergency? Break, break. Now, in the CB world, break, break was just a slang thing for get out of my way because I want to talk. But in amateur radio, if you say break, break, normally the radio will go silent and you've got it. If it's in a net and you say break, break, normally the net controller will say, we'll pause for your emergency, go. And everybody goes silent and let that person give their emergency on the air. Now, on the other hand, break by itself just means I'm not through talking yet, but I'm afraid the repeater's going to time out on me here and shut me down. So I'm going to say break and wait a second, then I'll key back up and go on. Again, it's just a courtesy thing. And by the way, most repeaters do have a timeout on them. It's called bozoing the repeater. And that means that you've talked past whatever that timeout period is and the repeater has shut you off. If you're listening to that and that happens, the person's talking about whatever and all of a sudden they just disappear. And then somebody else can key down, go in the repeater, everything's fine. That person's still talking, but they don't know it's not going anywhere. The repeater's not listening to them anymore.
The radios do it too. So when I bought mine, the default was 30 seconds and I didn't know it. So I was talking for like a minute and I didn't.
Well, a minute's okay. Our repeaters are 3.5 minutes, aren't they, Ron? Yeah. Yeah, we're 3.5 minutes. And oftentimes we set our radios with a timeout for how long we can transmit before it tells us we've got a problem. But generally 3.5 minutes on our repeater is enough time. I've always had enough time to say what I wanted to say in 3.5 minutes for one session. But if you feel uncomfortable or you think you're stretching it, you just say break, unkey for a second, key back up and continue your conversation. The break lets the net control know you're not through yet, you're coming right back, and you finish. Now, when you finish your conversation on the net, good courtesy is, when I'm finished, I'll say back to net, K5CRX. That lets the net control know I'm finished, I'm through, I'm not talking anymore right now. Go on to the next person. Where if I just stop talking, they don't know whether I'm through yet or not. And so they may call on the next person when I'm not really through yet. But by doing that, it just eliminates the confusion. Everybody knows I'm finished. It's okay. We'll move on. So just some little things there that make it run more smoothly. What about the doubles? You know what a double is, right? Or a triple or however many it is. That's when 2 or 3 people key up at the same time. And you get a bunch of garbage sounds out of the repeater as all those sounds try to mix together, and RF tries to mix together. If you're running the net and you're continuously getting all of these doubles like that, and you're just not getting anywhere, what can you do? Anybody? Single them out. If you know who they are, you could single them out. One of the things you can do, it's not done often, but one of the things you can do is say, we're having a lot of doubles right now. So let me ask you, before you come in, you key down and say this is, and unkey and listen. If somebody else is not talking, then you key down and give me your call sign. That is, you wait for somebody else. That way, we don't have everybody walking on everybody else. That's an easy way to do it. Hopefully people will pay attention and do that. And some people do that anyway. A lot of people will just do that by convention. Now, this is K5CRX, and that way we know. Quick keying, that's another little interesting tidbit. What is a quick key? That's where you key it, you start talking before you really have energized your transmitter. So I'm ready to say this is K5CRX, and so I put my radio here, and I say this is K5 click CRX. It's really slow key, I guess is what it really is. But then whoever's hearing don't hear the whole thing. So the idea being is you key, you wait half a second maybe, and then you start your speech. That gives your radio time to settle down, the repeater to pick you up, get everything ready, and everything will go smooth, and it'll go right on through. What if you're in a strange area and you want to check into somebody's net, or you hear somebody carrying on a net, or one of these nets on Wires X or on D-Star that you've never checked into before? What do you do with that? Listen, and then listen some more, and then listen a little longer still. Just see what they're doing, see what their flow is, and then just kind of blend in with whatever they're doing. And when the net control calls, okay, let's have some more check-ins, and then you check in, and you wait for him or her to call on you and bring you back into the net.
Another good reason to be careful about quick keying, it's not something we encounter very often with our repeaters, but there are several others that are linked. So when you
Yes.
key up, for example, the Farmersville repeater, when I key up on that repeater, the The one in Farmersville then talks to the one in Grayson County, and the one in Grayson County talks to one over in Denton. And so you have to wait for that radio signal to bounce to all three of them, otherwise your voice is getting cut off. So that
Yeah.
half-second pause is a good practice.
Yes, yes. It gives them time for everybody to get in sync and catch up. You're on.
Another good reason to not do key, particularly if you're in an emergency and you're asking for help, somebody's responding, make sure you have the pause. They may give you some key information right at the end. And if you click key, you stepped on it, you won't hear it, right? And other folks may not hear it either. They can't help you.
Yes, yes.
And that actually happened
Yes.
here in January, in Washington DC.
Did it?
That's, yeah, the helicopter.
Oh, okay.
PSA, the guy quick keyed right on a keyword.
Cut it off.
Well,
Didn't hear it.
anyway,
Yeah. That's a real live example, literally.
rest is history.
Yeah, real life example. So again, just listen. You know, we do the same thing on HF when we're out scrolling around on the bands on HF, and when we do a lot of listening and kind of see what's going on, what's going on. If you're doing a contest and you don't know what the contest is, and you listen to people, you kind of get the feel, the flow of what they're doing. What is the exchange? Are they giving their name and their call sign, their location, or are they just giving a call sign and a code of some kind, or some sequence number, whatever? You just listen to what's going on so you can get in sync and do what the rest of the folks are doing, and then you're in good shape. Good shape. Any questions or thoughts on that up to that point? We talked about a lot of different stuff, but it's all important.
I have one, so there's a net that I listen to, and it's on a linked system of all-star repeaters, so
Okay.
they make you say this is, and then break, because I think it goes all over, I've heard people from Scotland on that
Yeah,
net, but,
yeah.
sometimes they say with traffic, or most people just come in and say no traffic, so that's like not an emergency. If traffic, does that just have news for the net, but it's not break like
Okay.
emergency?
My familiarity with saying no traffic deals with the National Traffic System,
Oh,
which is built by ARRL. There's a national traffic system, but where amateurs deliver radio traffic. Every night on the Dallas repeater, 140,
147, 880,
thank you, 147.88.
146, 88. One of those.
147.88 sounds right, but anyway,
No,
the
you're right.
Dallas repeater, DARC.
660, this is the 666, and then 147.88.
Yep. So anyway, they have a net every night. I believe it's at 6 o'clock. Do you know?
There are, in Dallas, there are 2 UHF traffic net, or VHF traffic nets. One is in Dallas, one is in Irving.
Okay,
One
yeah.
is at 6:30 and one
One's
is
at-
at 9 p.m.
Yeah, and they're still doing
And
that.
then there are also HF nets throughout the day, yes. The traffic net, think of it like the postal service.
Yes,
The message goes from one mailman to the next,
Until
and
you
it
get-
has the message phonetically, completely, and accurately.
yes,
It's kind of like where we do our relaying on our
Okay.
net,
Mhm.
only they're accurate to the character.
literally,
So
literally.
even though this is a fun net, they're just on chatting, but sometimes they'll say no traffic.
Yeah.
Traffic.
Yeah.
So that you don't usually say it that way?
So a lot of nets, like our Sunday night net, we normally have a question topic. Well, how was your week in ham radio? Many nets don't. They just have everybody check in. And if
Okay.
someone says, I have traffic, it means I got something to say.
So
It might be what my week in
that's
ham
what I was
radio
trying to
was.
figure out.
That's what it is.
If it was like an
Yeah.
emergency thing, because it
Yeah.
sounds like it's
Nah,
just.
No,
it's generally-
yeah, it's generally not an emergency kind of thing. Now, on the formal traffic
That
nets,
is
on a
traffic.
formal traffic net, then that is a big deal. They'll be asking for check-ins, and if I want to check into the Dallas traffic net, and I don't want to send a message to anybody, but I want to check in because somebody might have a message coming in that I could deliver to somebody where I live. I'd say no traffic. That way he doesn't have to ask me later on, do you have traffic? On the other hand, if I do have traffic, I check in and I say, I have one outbound for Kalamazoo or whatever it is. And then when the time comes, I'll get to say that. And as Tim said, there's a very, very critically acclaimed specific list. You do certain things in certain order, Everything is done phonetically. Everything is spelled out. There's a count for the number of characters, and everything counts as a period counts as a character. If you use the little radiogram form, it has room for 25 words or 25 entries on it, which makes it easy to count them. And it has little blanks for each of the things you're supposed to say and do, and it's pretty marvelous when you get around to it. I have sent messages a time, not a lot, but a time or two. I used to have a good friend in Omaha, and I decided to send him a message one night through the Dallas traffic net. You know, I went through all that. And a couple of days later, I got a message back from him. Turns out he is the head traffic controller for the Omaha area, or he was back then. You know, and it was kind of interesting. But, and you can do it. You don't have to send a radiogram to another ham. I mean, you can send Aunt Susie a radiogram, says, I hope you have a great birthday next Tuesday. And you in the message, you tell the person who's going to deliver it what her name is and what her address is, or mailing address and a phone number or whatever it is that you have. And normally when I get one of those and it's up to me to deliver it, I normally would try a phone call first, unless I'm told otherwise. And I'd say, I have a radio message for you from whoever, and I would read it off to them, make sure they understand. And if all else fails, I can always get a busy signal. I will probably print it out, put it in an envelope, and mail it to them, snail mail it. Yeah, Ron.
So it's interesting that one may wonder why we would relay messages in this day and age. And if you go back to the ARRL, that's the American Radio Relay League. And that's how it got started.
Yes.
Was an experiment to see if they could send a message across the country. And how long would it take between hams? And it took many hours to finally get it across. But, you know, the FCC liked it, and here we are.
And it still works, and it's still there, and it's still active, and it's going on.
Ultimately, when infrastructure fails, when there's something really bad, then various relays or simplexes or nets or whatever come into, very useful for
Yes.
a few days.
Yeah, and that's very true. You know, our motto, is when all else fails. And that's really true. And the national traffic system, because it is so precise, can carry very critical information. You know, somebody's in the hospital, some doctor needs medicine someplace out that can't receive otherwise. Those kind of things can be sent. Yeah, Lewis?
In fact, when I first heard of amateur radio, it was actually, I received a phone call from my dad who I couldn't get a hold of over a month while he was in Puerto Rico during Hurricane Maria. So all the infrastructure, cell phone towers and everything wasn't working. So the American Red Cross had amateur radio operators using the national traffic system to get messages out of that area. So I just got a voicemail from an amateur radio operator in my area at the time in Boston, with a message saying my dad, our family's okay, everybody's okay.
Yeah, and that's real life, and that's what it's there for, ultimately. Now, we play around, we send cutesy messages and things like that, but sometimes, but that's what it's really there for, when all else fails.
That was what impacted while we have technology fairly not too long ago, it was very useful. So.
Okay, we talked about a whole bunch of stuff. Can we put it into practice? How many of you have a radio? Does everybody have a radio with you? Let me say it the other way. Does anybody not have a radio? Because I've got 5 over there. You can use one of mine. It's not a big deal. We got radios. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to get everybody, we're going to do simplex, which means all we need is the one frequency. We're going to use 146.54, which makes it easy. We're going to get somebody to start it off who will be the net control. You've got a net control script that you can use. We'll get you to get that script out and get it handy. And then once the net control is appointed, he or she will kick it off by reading the little script there and telling all that. And then a couple of people will key down and respond. We'll send the traffic back and forth. Then that person will turn the net over to somebody else, and we'll run around the room and let everybody have a chance to talk. That's kind of the idea behind that whole thing. It's just, it's real life, except we're just local right in here. It's not a problem. Does anybody not have a call sign? Has everybody got a call sign? Everybody have your own call sign? Okay, if you don't have a call sign, okay, we could use somebody else's call sign And as long as they're next to you as your control operator, you're okay. Okay, now, we want to get all of our radios on 146.54. However you do that, you're going to go to VFO mode and get into 146.54. And you may have to scroll up or down, or maybe you can enter it straight from the keypad, depending on the kind of radio you have as to how you'll do that. Okay? And preferably, if you can figure out how to put it in low power mode, put it in low power, because you really don't need 5 watts to talk from here to the other side of the room, you know? Okay? Now then, let me, okay, he's good. Okay, has everybody got a copy of the net script or got one where you can look at it? Or look on with somebody? Okay, who wants to be our volunteer first net control? Anybody volunteer? Louis, you've been volunteered. You were just volunteered. He was pointing at you. You want to be the first? You'll be net control to start? Okay. Okay, so Louis is going to be our first net control. He'll key down when he's ready. We'll make sure everybody's ready first. When he's ready, he'll key down, do the announcement to get started, and ask for check-ins. We get a couple of 3 check-ins from you, and then he'll pass it on to somebody else. Okay, is everybody ready? Is anybody not ready? We're not quite ready yet. Okay. I was going to say just use one of mine in a pinch if you want to.
We'll work on it, and we'll let her use my call sign and while they're working on it.
That'll work.
Yeah, mine
That'll work.
doesn't. Mine won't transmit. I screwed it up.
It won't.
No.
Okay, let's see, we are on that 146.540.
You gotta know the menus.
And I'm on the wrong one. Where is the AD switch?
Yeah, but they're all different. That's what I did on
So
this.
I've got still sending the money, the 35,
Oh, wow.
Well, I can set the frequency to get it over the.
There it is, and memory buttons.
Well, they don't, they cheated us. They didn't give us all the buttons we usually get. Yeah, I'm sorry, I'm at a loss too. I don't know where to go with that one right now. In a pinch. There's one that's already set up for right now. We can use that. Did you get it? Okay.
See, that
me.
works.
That was me.
I missed 3 questions.
Okay. Okay, we ready?
I was excited.
More or less? Louis, you demand. Kick it off.
Welcome. Channel mode.
We will now take check-ins from local hands. Please check in with your call sign, first name, in groups of 3. First, check in, please. Come in now in groups of 3 and slowly, please.
Okay, anybody having trouble hearing?
Bravo 4, Romeo Oscar Yankee. Checking in. You can't hear me? No, I'm on the wrong, I got the wrong outset.
46.54, yep, that's correct. Oh,
I went through.
okay, key it again. Okay, you've got an offset though, I think. Did it change in frequency on you? It's not doing simplex. That's what FT70. Yeah, it's doing the repeater thing.
Second year, my plan's not working.
Are you okay?
Yeah.
You receiving okay?
Yeah.
Okay.
All right, let's start from the top again.
And you guys got it all under control, I'm sure. Everything okay?
Net recognizes CAF5 OEX, Jennifer.
Kilo 5, Charlie Romeo X-ray.
That station coming again, please.
Kilo 5, Charlie Romeo X-ray. That's a hoss.
No, I like it. It's like the hand stick, but it doesn't have that sound.
Do you have children? Do you have children? You have kids? If you ever have kids, you can use that as a disciplinary tool.
Next group, please.
Kilo Juliet 5 Lima X-ray Kilo Mary.
Kilo Juliet Lima X-ray Kilo Mary.
Kilo Juliet 5 Lima X-ray Papa L.
Okay. You got 2 or 3?
Kilo Juliet 5 Lima X-ray Papa L.
5 chickens. Pass control. Pass control.
Pass control now?
Yeah, pass it to somebody else. Who'd like to be the next net control? Come on now. You got it, Robert? Okay, Robert says he'd take it. WZ5B. So we'll pass it to WZ5B. So you'll just say passing net control to WZ5.
This is Cat 5 QAX. My name is Louis. Passing that control to the next control operator.
Robert?
Robert? Whiskey Zulu 5 Victor.
I couldn't get it to come out. Sorry, I couldn't get it to come out for lower. You got it. Just do whatever you want to. Call for a couple. Get somebody to talk a little bit. Ask them about their day or something.
All right. Good evening, local amateur radio operators. This is Whiskey Zulu 5 Victor. Name is Robert, and I will be your friendly neighborhood net control station for this segment of the training net. This local net is meeting tonight to introduce ham radio operators to a net environment. This is an informal net, and we invite all amateur radio operators to participate. We will now take check-ins from local amateur radio operators. Please check in with your call sign and your first name. Not in groups of 3, just keep them coming.
Whiskey 5 Mike Echo Foxtrot. Michael. Kilo India 5 Quebec Alpha X-ray Lewis.
Kilo Tango with your mic, Tim.
Alpha Charlie 5 Romeo Foxtrot. Scott.
Whiskey 2 Charlie Bravo India Ron.
Okay.
Whiskey 4 Papa Tango Yankee Junior.
Oops. We're a little close together. That's okay.
November Zulu 5 Whiskey Janice.
Slide right behind you.
I didn't hear you.
Is anybody, you need to take anybody that's new in that. Get them to talk. Ask them how's their day or something.
Yeah.
We're having fun yet.
So I need to talk to you when we're done.
Okay.
So the net recognizes Whiskey 5 Mike Delta Foxtrot. Did not get your name. Whiskey 5 Mike Delta Foxtrot. Recheck, please.
Correction on the call sign. Whiskey 5 Mike Echo Foxtrot. First name is Michael.
All right, Michael, welcome to the net. Okay, so the net recognizes Whiskey 5 Mike Echo Foxtrot. Michael. Kilo India 5 Quebec Alpha X-ray Lewis. Kilo 5 Tango India Mike Tim. Alpha Charlie 5 Romeo Foxtrot Scott. Whiskey 2 Charlie Bravo India Ron. Whiskey 4 Papa Tango Yankee Junior. November Zulu 5 Whiskey Janice. Whiskey Zulu 5 Mike Echo Lima Melinda. Okay, if you did not hear your name, you probably doubled, so please come now if you were one of the doubles. Okay, nothing heard. So, two questions for tonight. Actually, just one question for tonight. How was your last week in amateur radio? We'll start with Michael, Whiskey 5, Mike, Echo Foxtrot.
Thank you, Robert, for the question. Tried to get out to Bonham Sunday to do a little park activation and see if I could catch some 10-meter activity. Got out there, got everything set up. Wife was in the car, got a phone call from our next door neighbor, said it was raining like crazy and our umbrella was going nuts. So had to go take everything down and head back to the house, and everything was okay. And it never rained in Bonham, so missed all that. Other than that, I had a good week.
That's awesome, Michael. I'm jealous of that, but wish I could get out there and activate a little bit more. Okay, let's go to Lewis, Kilo India 5, Quebec Alpha X-Ray. Go ahead, Lewis.
This is Cat 5 QAX. This week I've just been programming a couple of radios and just working through a few different projects in the house with some hotspots and DMR stuff. Other than that, nothing else. Trying to get back to it.
All right, thank you, Lewis. This is Whiskey Zulu 5 Victor. This is Robert, and this is a special edition.
Have you ever been net control?
Tuesday night.
Sorry?
Have you ever been in net control?
I've never been in that.
Would you like to try it?
I was gonna volunteer next.
You got it. I'll tell him you're next. Pass control to Ellie when you get through. She said she'd like to be next.
Fox hunt attenuator for my antenna system. So looking forward to some future fox hunts. Back on the net.
How's it going? Didn't get a chance to say hi when you came in. Hanging in there?
So far, so good.
All right. Didn't work, but we got it.
November Zulu 5 Echo Rob. Anybody else? Kilo Juliet 5 Lima X-ray Papa L. All right, that recognizes Whiskey 2 Charlie Bravo India Ron. November Zulu 5 Echo Rob. And Kilo Juliet 5 Lima X-ray Papa L. Go ahead, Ron. Tell us about your weekend radio.
Well, I went to the early risers breakfast. And just as a note, Dallas, Mordell Park had a late risers breakfast. Yeah, for, well, yeah, the early one was 5:30.
It was called late risers at 5:30. Late risers.
Oh, well, that's more reason.
I have some things to give away.
The
Okay.
restaurant didn't open till,
I'm gonna stop it after this and
people
we'll
were lined up
do
in the
that.
parking lot earlier and
Great job.
earlier and earlier. Man, we were watching the moon rise. With that, back to the net, WW2, CEI.
Thanks, Ron. The net recognizes November Zulu 5 Echo. How was your weekend radio? This is November Zulu 5 Echo Rob.
And when you get your last one, go ahead and do the shutdown and wrap it up.
Weekend radio, my sister Judy is celebrating her 60th birthday and has shown a little bit of interest in radio, so I sprang her a really high-end set of radios by Bayo Fang, I think. And she was really excited to get those, and we're encouraging her to get her, and she doesn't even have her license yet, but we're kind of letting her listen in and hoping that she tests for the first level soon. Back to net control. This is November Zulu 5 Echo. Thanks, Rob, and I hope you remembered that they were GMRS radios, so it's a little less scandalous that we gave her, both ham radios. All right, that recognizes Kilo Juliet 5 Lima X-ray Papa L. Go ahead. How was your weekend radio? It was great. I was mobile on my way back from Colorado, driving back down to Dallas, Texas. Got into the Trash Network. If you haven't heard of that, definitely look it up. And made contacts throughout my travels, hitting different repeaters on the way.
Good deal. Good deal.
That sounds fantastic. We're going to be heading to Colorado next month, hoping to do a little radio on our way. Well, this is November Zulu 5 Whiskey, Janice, and the net is now closed. Thank you, everyone, for participating. Again, this is November Zulu 5 Whiskey.
Okay, that's kind of what it's about. I hope I didn't cut it off too soon, but we do have to vacate the room here in a little bit. Also, Jerry has a couple of things, and I think I need to close out the slides. Summary real quick. You set up your radio. We've talked about that, what it takes to set it up. You need the frequency, the offset, whether it's plus or minus, and any tones that are involved. Set your radio up, save it to memory, get on some repeaters, try some, especially those that are outside. I love what El said about traveling through. I mean, that's when it's fun too. And sometimes you go through and you call and call and call and nobody ever comes back to you on a repeater. But that's life, you know, some are a bit more busy than others. Anyway, if you get a new radio, get a ham friend to help you check it out on Simplex, then get it on the net. Public service events coming up. I think the next thing that will be coming up for us will be McKinney's Oktoberfest. We assist the city of McKinney with that. We have someone stationed where the bus pickup is to take people down. And then we have someone, 2 or 3 people stationed downtown in a canopy and represents the club downtown as well. Plus, if there's anything that goes on either end, we can let the event organizers know there's a problem here, there's a problem there. Or if something bad happened and they lost all their communications, we're there to back them up. So that's the next thing coming up for public service. Be prepared to step up, have a lot of fun when you go along the way. This is how you do it.
There's one more public service item actually that is just before that, and that is Plano Balloon Festival.
Oh, yes, I'm sorry. I'm glad. Yes, thank you.
We are a participating organization.
Yes, the Plano Balloon Festival, by the way, if you've never worked that is a blast. And especially if you go the night that what they call the balloon burn. Balloon glow, thank you. Where they light up the balloons, it's something.
That are scheduled this year are Saturday and Sunday morning, so those are the only 2 periods during which there will be recovery teams.
Yeah.
There may be a flight on Friday morning. It's the media flight. That's never staffed.
Yeah. Anyway, it's a lot of fun for that one. Yes, sir.
Hey, Bob, real quick, I wanted to announce, I had stickers made of our club logo. I'm giving one away free to every member or guest that's here tonight. So if you haven't picked one up, I'll ask that you put your call sign on it.
Fantastic.
So I can document that everyone's,
Okay.
whoever got one.
Okay.
And then if you want extras, I'm selling extras $1 a piece.
Okay.
Just to cover my costs.
Sounds good.
So, but everyone gets one free if you haven't already got one.
Okay. Jerry, it's yours.
I need someone, please, to pick a number between 2 and 22, and those 2 numbers can be included. Rob? 11. 11. Roy? You want a movie card, free movie, or a first watch?
First watch. First watch. Yes. I love first watch.
All right, Rob, number
13.
Going to breakfast there.
13 is Justin. You get a movie card. Free movie. So far. One more number. 17 is Joe Finnegan. Joe. I hope you like the movies.
Yeah, as long as my wife doesn't fall asleep.
We'll see a movie from some.
Happy Gilmore too.
And that was just a bonus, by the way. Thank you, Jerry, for doing that for us. She's been very, very, very active in getting things for us, so she deserves it. Yes, indeed. Thank you, Jerry. Okay, any last-minute comments, questions, thoughts before we dismiss?
Just a big thank you, Bob.
Oh, I enjoy doing this. I really do. Now, let me put in a shameless plug. We're doing our solid state class on the 30th, same place here, from about 9 until whenever we get through. We have the room, I believe, until 2 to give us a little extra cushion if we need it. But that's a real hands-on thing where we'll actually build some circuits with transistors and an IC and different things. It's a lot of fun class. If you can make that, love to have you. If you haven't made the previous classes, that's not a problem. We'll walk you through whatever you need to get you where you need to go. So hope to see you then. Other than that, have a great evening. See you all the next time around. Take care.